Things keep on getting crazier for the Toronto Maple Leafs as a meeting that was supposed to happen between the ownership, Brendan Shanahan, Brad Treliving, that was supposed to happen on Thursday, has now been moved to Friday, and fans are furious, fans are confused, fans are wondering what is going on. So we're going to break all that down, as well as kind of discuss that the core four as we know it, as we've previously discussed, is seeming like it's definitely going to be coming to an end. So stay tuned for all that in this episode, but before we do, quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. We're on the road to 9,000 subscribers. If you're a part of the 80% who haven't hit that button, we mean the world to us if you do. Darius and I produce 2 to 3 Leafs videos a day, especially during this crazy time. But Darius, let's just get right into the video. And there's a lot to discuss today, and let's just start with this. So Keith Pelly, Brendan Shanahan, and Brad Treliving having a press conference Friday together. My God, it feels like they're running it back. Now, that's always kind of the initial thought here, is that maybe they're actually going to run it back. But it's very interesting. And we also have a report from Elliotte Friedman saying Elliotte Friedman isn't sure who replaces Shanahan if he is fired or removed. He isn't convinced that MLSE wants a president of hockey ops anymore. If that's the case, Treliving report directly to Pelly. So there's some interesting things going on. And obviously, this meeting was supposed to be on Thursday. It got moved to Friday. We don't know why. Maybe to allow for a Keefe firing, which we'll be discussing in a little bit here. What are your thoughts on this?
I want to see, first of all, in this press conference, and we have no idea what it's going to be about now, because the fact that they moved it back a day, that's weird after announcing it was going to be Thursday. The fact that they're actually naming who's going to be in the press conference, because usually you wouldn't name a person if they're going to be fired. So all three of them are going to be there. First and foremost, I think all Leaf fans want to see these guys take accountability, because we didn't hear much accountability from the players yesterday. Maybe 2 guys. Keefe and Samsonov. So I would like to see some accountability and just say, hey, listen, we failed and this is the plan going forward. And then in terms of who's still there, I mean, everyone is still there. And I do agree that I don't think the Leafs should have a president of hockey ops anymore, because it's just a terrible trail of not broken telephone, but people are getting in the way of actual decisions that need to be made in a timely manner. And I think we have to move away from that model, because it just doesn't work. Back when Brian Burke was the president and GM, if he wanted to make a move, he just made a move. Now there's a whole process down the line. So I do think, I'm wondering now, and some people are speculating this too, if Brendan Shanahan is staying in MLSE, but he's just moving away from that role, if he's just going to move up and do something else and maybe not even focus with the Leafs either, right? So I wonder if he does stick around just in a different role, because for as much flack as he's getting for keeping the core four together, because make no mistake about it, as soon as Kyle Dubas showed any inkling of wanting to move on from the core four, he was fired. Not only for that reason, but he was. And Shanahan wanted to keep them together. So as much as people are dumping on him, the Leafs were a joke before he got here. He implemented so many things that made this organization better and first class. So you have to give credit where credit is due, but he is making a lot of mistakes, like failing to move off of things when they simply just do not work. So the criticism is obviously just, but he did do a lot of things. The Leafs didn't even have like nutritionists before this guy got here, okay? So he's done a lot for the organization. So I do wonder if he moves up and they just make the game of broken telephone a little bit shorter between Keith Pelly and then Brad Treliving as GM.
Yeah, and there's also the speculation that maybe this would be like they did, I forget the team, we might have the report in the screenshot here, and maybe he'll be formally announcing that he's moving on at the press conference, which could also be a thing. We won't know until like 72 or 72 hours from now. But it does seem like either way, and we have a new animation to show you guys right now, so bear with this, that Sheldon Keefe could be on his way out of Toronto. And you can see him there on the horse on his way out of TO. That's what it seems like is going to happen either way. No matter what happens to Shanahan, I'd like to think that Keefe is on his way out, which is a good thing, I guess, depending if you're a fan of Keefe or not. But let's get into some of the more screenshots and reports, because I guess the biggest thing here is why they changed it from Thursday to Friday. I'm assuming it's just because Keith Pelly wanted some more time to kind of evaluate the situation, but you have to assume he has his plan in place, and they had their plan in place. If they lose round 1, this happens. If they lose round 1 in heartbreaking fashion, this happens. But you have to see Shanahan talking about management team on Friday is interesting. I don't see Pelly keeping him in the exact same role. Like you said, Darius, this is from Banksy. Shout out to Banksy. Some have theorized he's moving up in the MLSE or moving away from hockey. That would make a lot of sense, and Brad just reports to Pelly, which, like you mentioned back in the Brian Burke days, I mean, Brad Treliving made some solid moves. Obviously, the Klingberg signing and the Reeves, the Bailey was a bit rough, especially the Klingberg one, but he made the right additions at the deadline, and I don't think Brad Treliving's job is in jeopardy whatsoever. I think he's in a fine spot. So that makes sense that he's there. Obviously, it makes sense that Keith Pelly's there for MLSE. Sheldon Keefe's not going to be there. He's probably going to be fired. So now it's just Shanahan. That's the big question mark going forward. And you can see here, I don't think it's necessary for an NHL team to have a CEO, a president, and the GM. So that seems like the way that it's going to potentially go. Maybe I'd hope it's not like Sid says here, my God, it feels like they're running it back. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I don't think you can take that from the fact that these three are together, because there's a lot of ways this could go. Maybe Shanahan wants to end it amicably and announce his departure from the team. That's option A. Maybe he is staying, but that doesn't mean they're running it back with the team necessarily, because Keith Pelly has been open to making changes.
Yeah, and that did happen before, by the way. Like the Leafs fired Brian Burke, and then they gave him his own press conference to say goodbye, basically. And there's a really funny quote about Steve Simmons in there too. Go check it out if you haven't. But that happened before. They fired him and they let him go on his own terms and just, you know, give his goodbye. So I don't think it could be that, right? But I think the fact that Keith Pelly is there makes me believe a little bit more that they aren't running it back. Because if they were going to run it back, I feel like it would just be Shanahan and Treliving there giving their thoughts on the season. And this is what the plan is going forward. The usual spiel, right? And I think with Keith Pelly there, like, why is he speaking? This guy's the CEO of MLSE, right? So why is he speaking at this Leaf? Something is happening on Friday. Something big. There's a course, a new course that they're taking, I think, because this guy is speaking and he just got hired and he's new here. And obviously there's a plan that he came in with. You don't get hired for a position like that with no plan, just your resume, right? Yeah, obviously the resume helps, but I'm sure he has a plan in place that he wants to implement. So it's going to be really interesting to watch. I think they're going to go a different direction. I wouldn't think Shanahan is going to outright be fired. And that would be a little weird to be like, hey, Shanahan's fired. And also here's the next 50 minutes of him sitting beside us. That's weird. So I would think that he is going to move up because he is really good at what he does off ice in terms of off ice moves, the way he's built up the organization. Like I said, he's done a lot in that way. I just feel like he might be holding the team back in terms of the on ice product when he's nixing trades that would make the team better and also wanting to keep guys and a salary structure that does not work. So if he's to move away from that, I have no problem with that, but they have to do that. I think something has to change. We have to see something Friday that is basically an apology to the fans and saying this is what we're doing moving forward and this is why it'll be different.
Yeah, and they're not going to come out and directly say that they're going to make a trade to the core for Mitch Marner, but they might say that, you know, moves need to happen, changes need to happen. I'm sure they'll get asked some direct questions, but yeah, it seems like something big is brewing. I don't have an issue with retaining Shanahan if you realize that the core strategy didn't work and wants to build a proper winning team. That's kind of the sentiment of most Leafs fans here, is that I don't necessarily hate Shanahan. I just hate the fact that he's been complacent with this core for so long. You mentioned the Dubas thing. He obviously, as soon as he made an inkling to move Marner, perhaps, before the no-move clause kicked in, he was fired. Obviously, that wasn't the only reason. He sucked as a GM, kind of. He gave up a lot of picks. Questionable. We'll say questionable as a GM. Left Brad Treliving with no second-round picks, and you can look back at all the breadcrumb trail and how that impacted the Leafs this deadline and going forward, but in general, Shanahan does an okay job, I think, depending on what his role can be. But he needs to realize that changes need to be made. And if he doesn't, then we can't. The nightmare scenario, I think, for Leafs fans right now, and we'll probably have a whole video on this coming out as well, is literally the nightmare scenario, is they run it back with the core four, doesn't work again. They probably, maybe the biggest change they make is changing up the head coach to get a new head coach, but they keep the same core, the same players, they work around the edges. It doesn't work again. And then Mitch Marner, you're left with getting no value for him, or you re-sign him and keep running it back. But do you have any final thoughts before I wrap it up? I'm hoping that doesn't happen. I don't want to put it out there. I don't think that'll happen, but that would be the nightmare scenario, is they think, okay, changing the manager is good enough for this team, kind of like the Blue Jays do. The Blue Jays, same core, never works, doesn't win anything. They change the manager, nothing happens.
Well, we're this far deep into this era, right? And Sid Sixero even said that he believes that nothing, well, he said at first, I think his opinion has changed a little bit, but at first he was like, I wouldn't be surprised if nothing changed. And as you kind of sit on that, you're like, this is the Leafs, right? Like, they are a little tone deaf at times. So I could absolutely see that. But I think we're at the point now where even they're thinking, and of course, new fresh set of eyes now with Keith Pelly as a CEO.
That's the big thing.
Coming in. That's the big wild card here, really, because if that wasn't a thing, I do wonder if they just run it all back, right? But it's going to be really interesting. I do think we're at a point now where even they're realizing with the new set of eyes and everything, something has to change. Like, you got to do something else because this has not worked. And we have this is not like it didn't work for 1 or 2 years. Give them another shot. This is reaching like Nathan McKinnon levels of like, I'm in my 9th year, I haven't won anything, and I'm pissed. So like, get pissed off, make some changes, build a winner, and stop being complacent with what you've built. Like, it hasn't really gone anywhere.
Yeah, and that'll wrap it up. We'll end it on one more of these for you all, because I think no matter what happens with Shanahan and all these talks, Keith is on his way out of Toronto. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on all that, because ultimately, Darius, we're not going to know until Friday whether or not, who's going to be moving. Maybe we'll know about Sheldon Keefe before then, but Friday will be the big day. But thank you guys for watching. We'll see you soon.